What is baptism? I'm sorry to say that many people think of it as a ritual which makes a person a nominal member of a so-called church. Before I experienced a genuine baptism, I underwent such a ritual. We should never baptize people in a ritualistic way. Whenever we are going to baptize people, we must pray and exercise our spirit with authority and with the powerful name of the Lord Jesus. Then we baptize people, putting them into a tomb and burying them. This burial separates them from the world. We have been baptized into Christ's death. We have been buried with Christ in baptism. We are dead and buried from the rudiments of this world. We have passed through the flood waters and the Red Sea. The flood waters that judged Noah's generation rescued him, and the Red Sea that judged the Egyptians rescued the Israelites. This is the salvation that we need today. Every Christian needs the second aspect of God's full salvation. Have you enjoyed this aspect of His salvation? I can shout and declare, I have been separated from Egypt. I have been separated from this evil, crooked, and perverted generation. Typified by the flood of the deluge. The baptism with water was typified by the flood that saved Noah from his evil age. Noah was baptized in a large baptistry and experienced a very lengthy baptism. It lasted at least 40 days. The number 40 signifies testing. No one could have been built such a large baptistry or collected so much water. The first mention of baptism in the Bible was a worldwide baptism. Our baptism must also be like that. Once you get into that kind of baptistry, there is no way out. Although it is easy for us to get out of the baptistry in the meeting hall, there was no way for Noah to get out of the baptistry used in his baptism. Noah was buried in a worldwide tomb. That was the seed of baptism. Christ's death is all-inclusive. The baptism based upon his death is worldwide, even universally wide, full of judging and burying water. Typified by the waters of the Red Sea. The baptism with water signifying the judging death of Christ was also typified by the waters of the Red Sea that saved the Israelites from the Egyptian age. We have two types of baptism with water, the flood and the Red Sea. 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 20 to 21 says that the flood through which Noah passed was a figure of the baptism that saves us. And 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 1 to 2 tells us that the Red Sea through which the Israelites passed was also a baptism that saved God's people from the evil power, from the enemy slavery. All the worldly occupations, all the worldly pleasures, amusement, sports are buried in the Red Sea of our baptism. This kind of effectual baptism in the power of the Spirit saves us from the world, from the evil age, condemned and judged by God. Signified by the laver and the brass sea and the sea of glass. In addition to the types which typify baptism, we have the signs in the Bible which signify the meaning of baptism. Baptism was signified by the laver of the tabernacle. In front of the tabernacle was the laver. The area outside the separating line of the tabernacle represented the wall. Suppose a person was coming out of the world and wanted to be a priest and get into the presence of God within the tabernacle. Firstly, he had to pass through the altar, signifying the cross of Christ. On the altar, the offerings for sins were presented. After passing through the altar, his sins were dealt with and he was saved. Many Christians think that after passing through the altar, he could have immediately entered into the holy place within the tabernacle. However, he could not move that fast, for after passing through the altar, he needed the washing of the laver. The laver did not eliminate his sins. His sins were dealt with at the altar already. The laver dealt with his dirt from the earth. Since the dirt of the earth was still upon him, he needed to be washed. The washing of the laver removed this dirt. The blood was at the altar, not at the laver. After his sins had been dealt with at the altar, and after the earthly dirt had been washed away at the laver, then he could enter into the holy place and come into the presence of God. Many Christians do not have the way to come into God's presence. True, they have been saved at the cross, but to their realization, there is still a separation, a barrier, that frustrates them from entering into God's presence. What is this? It's the dirt of the world. They lack the washing of the level to remove their dirt of the world. In other words, their sins have been dealt with on the cross, but their world has not been buried beneath the Red Sea. The laver is a sign of baptism, the flood, and the Red Sea. The principle is the same with the one brass sea and the 10 levels associated with the temple. Once the children of Israel were established in the land of Canaan, they built a temple. Along with the temple, they built a brass sea and 10 levels. Brass signifies judgment. The brass sea and the 10 levels indicates the fullness of the realization of baptism. You cannot enter into the presence of God until you pass through the true meaning of baptism, that is to bury the world.